Well, Mike, it's great to get back together here with you on another episode of the Hector and Mike Experience, Common Sense in an Uncommon World. And I know we've got a lot of different topics we're going to be covering today. And I wanted to kind of start off with what seems to be a old playbook. Well, maybe not too old since it was done during the recall that is now being brought back out this past week. And I'm going to read from Alexi over Reporter. And this is kind of what he put on his Twitter. On Zoom, on Zoom with campaign volunteers, Gavin Newsom accused the Republican opponent, Brian Dahle, of supporting the January 6th attack, not acknowledging Biden as president, and in quotes says this guy is Trump through and through. So it looks like the Gavin Newsom and his team are bringing back his like Trump playbook. He did it against Larry Elder in the recall, and now he's started off with the endorsed candidate from the California Republican Party.
I saw a picture of Brian Dahle. I think Brian Dahle's hair is much better than Donald Trump. So I don't think he's the same as Donald Trump. But you go to the playbook because it works. I mean, that's the bottom line, and it worked in the recall. It created the image of Trump against Newsom. The problem he has this time is that I don't think you have that same kind of environment. It was really actually was quite stunning to me, and this is no respect to Brian Dahle or any of the other Republicans that are running for governor in the June primary, that he would go out and say something like that, to elevate Brian or just lift him up in the sense of being in the same league. Again, it's not a knock at Brian. It's just the political reality of it all. And so for him to do that, it's kind of interesting. I don't think people like him make those kind of political mistakes. He makes mistakes on governing, but not political mistakes usually. And I think that might have been one of them, to do that. And, he could try the Trump playbook all he wants, and, the January 6th thing. And it's like, but honestly, and nobody discounts what happened there are people that discount what happened on January 6th. I shouldn't say that. We saw a couple of them in court this past week. But I think most people on both sides of the aisle understand exactly what happened on January 6th, and condemn it. I mean, it should never have happened. But the difference is it's a year plus since then, and in that year plus, the economy has shrunk. America's gotten several black eyes in foreign policy, several black eyes in the military. In California specifically, we celebrate when gas goes under $6 a gallon, which is extraordinarily bizarre. We're being talked about now that there's no more water in California again. We have incompetence running rampant in government, whether it's, a $1 billion computer that doesn't work, or, the EDD stuff with the fraud. And so, I think that's the stuff that people care about. They go to the market and they can't find chicken tenders. Or when they do, the question is, what's more expensive, chicken tenders or your gallon of gas? It's pretty sad when a pack of cigarettes starts costing less than a gallon of gas or your chicken tenders, by the way. So those are the things I think people care about. And so the whole Trump boogeyman thing that he wants to try and pull, I'm not sure it's going to work.
Well, and we did talk to Brian, and he did issue out a statement, and he basically said, look, those that rioted over in January 6th should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. There were some individuals who were outside protesting, and if you were doing it under the law, then you shouldn't be prosecuted. But those that did break in and cause the havoc, they should be prosecuted.
Right.
As to the second point of whether it acknowledges Biden as president of the United States, his comment, along with other people, is, well, of course, we've got $6 a gallon of gasoline. We've got inflation the highest it's been in 40 years. Yeah, every single day we are paying for the fact that Joe Biden is president of the United States. And so,
Right.
yeah, everyone realizes it, and everyone knows that Joe Biden is president of the United States because we didn't have this prior to him being in office.
Right.
And so,
Good
those,
answer, by the way.
yeah,
He
and
had a
so,
good answer for that.
and as we put those two questions aside, I mean, a lot of it is you've got a governor who's kind of going to is facing some headwinds, and part of it is, as you mentioned, not just the economy, but we've got the highest homeless rate in the nation. We've got businesses that are leaving. I know it seems like a joke, but remember about a month and a half ago where U-Haul ran out of trucks
Mm-hmm.
because we had so many people that moved out.
Right.
I mean, they ran out of trucks,
Mm-hmm.
and so he's got a lot of these problems happening in the state. Not a lot of solutions. Um, and the solutions have been, well, let's just throw more money at it. Let's throw more money at it. Like in the homeless situation, we, they've allocated and have spent somewhere around $20 billion in the last 3-4 years to deal with the homeless crisis, but it's only gotten worse.
Right.
And so, I think part of what Gavin Newsom did with his volunteers, obviously trying to rally up his volunteers, but I think he looks at maybe a Brian Dahle as someone who's just kind of the clear opposite of him. Here we have an individual who is, business owner, a small business owner, who's a farmer, and is a state legislator. He's a state senator right now who understands that gives him the ability to understand how government works. But at the same time, on the weekends, he goes back to farming with his family, and he understands what it's like to have that small business. He's from a small town. He doesn't have the political elitism that Gavin Newsom has, where he's had a lot of people kind of propping him up. And so Brian is also an individual who's kind of plain spoken. He will call BS when it needs to be, and at the same time, he'll just kind of just give it to you straight. I mean,
If he
what
calls BS when it happens, he's a pretty busy guy then, because there's a hell of a lot of BS going on in the CA. Let me tell you.
that there is. And the other thing that struck me kind of interesting is, he's probably one of the only legislators I have ever met who knows how to change a transmission, who knows how to rebuild an engine. And I got an opportunity to go with him over to Reading. This was several months ago, and we ended up at this Mexican restaurant, just kind of off the road there. And he ended up ordering chile rellenos, which is kind of, usually you go with the normal one. It's like, give me, a carne asada burrito, or give me some
I'll have
tacos.
the taco bowl.
Yeah, or the taco board. That's right. No, this guy orders chile rellenos. I'm like, good Lord. I don't even order chile rellenos. I'm like, all right, let's try mine. He goes, oh, they're really
Hope you
good.
didn't have a long drive after that.
We did. But he's just a
Normal.
normal good guy. I mean, just
Yeah.
I don't know how else to describe it. He cares a lot about what's happened in the state. He cares about his family, and he's like, look, I've got to do something to try to make a change, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to
Right.
run against Gavin Newsom, and why not?
Yeah. Well, and certainly there's no shortage of things to talk about, and no shortage of solutions that need to be found, because it's one thing to talk about things, but also find how do you fix them. And that's, I think, what people are looking for is, we know there's a homeless problem. We know there's a problem of people sleeping on the streets and what it's causing to society. We know that we may have gone too far on some of this legislation on criminals and bail and penalties. We know we've gone too far, we haven't gone too far, as we'll talk about later, but some of the crazy legislation that passes the House and the Senate here in California that drives businesses away, like you mentioned, and people voting with their feet, leaving the state. So, but the question becomes, who can fix that? And I think that's really the question that needs to be asked during this campaign, is not just what the problems are, who can fix it? Who can pull people together and fix it? Clearly, the people that created the problem aren't going to be able to fix it, because they don't even acknowledge that there's a problem there. They've had unlimited amounts of money to fix it. They still need more money. I mean, it's incredible when you think of, 45 billion last year for a surplus and 27 billion this year for a surplus. And, they still run around and support a death tax after you're dead because they want to, they still need more money even though you're in the grave. I mean, it's just those kinds of things that we know what the problems are, but we need a fixer. It's Gavin Newsom's not a fixer. So it'll be, the obvious challenge is name identification, money, and all of that kind of stuff. But the fact that I was actually surprised the fact that even Gavin Newsom had volunteers. I was like, he's got volunteers for what? But he's got volunteers, and the fact that he would say that, I know it's like to gin up the troops and everything like that, but you would think he'd do it to gin up his troops, talk about all the positive things that he's done,
Right.
And what have you. But I don't think that. I think the Donald Trump card in California worked once, but I don't think it'll work again, and I don't think it'll work in an election where you're going to see, in all likelihood, a red wave that takes place because of what's happened on the national level.
Well, and let's stay on this topic here, with what's happening with Brian and Gavin in this playbook is what does Brian need to do? Does Brian need to go out there and talk about some of the problems, but offer some of the solutions, or does he go right after governor and say, here we have a governor who does a couple things very well. He makes a lot of promises, and he knows how to run for office. But one of the key ingredients is doesn't know how to solve these problems.
Right.
Things have just gotten worse, and so where does someone like Brian, who's is going to have limited funds, he has been the first to admit and admitted several times. He says, "Look, I realize this is an uphill battle. It's going to be. He goes. I know he's the underdog, and he's admitted to being the underdog. As Brian has indicated, every race that he's run, he's always been the underdog. But at the same time, he's a farmer, and realized nothing comes easy. It's going to be through hard work that he's going to look to defeat Gavin Newsom. But what are some of the things?
I think what he does is I think people need to understand that it's not a lack of money in this state, whether it's in classrooms or whether it's in homeless thing or crime. It's not a lack of money. We have more money than they know what to do with. So I think pointing out the fact, things that will resonate with people no matter what political party they are. I think the first thing he's got to do is not just talk to Republicans. He's got to talk to Democrats. He's got to talk to decline to states. I think that's number one. And number two is talk to them about things that, just make no sense. If you're spending all of this money on the homeless situation and it's only gotten worse, why do you have the same people come up with the same ideas to spend more money? It's got to be the point of, and there's other things within state government. The EDD is one of them. The fact that they passed this legislation that drives businesses out. The fact that there's a legislator that thinks that people should work 4 days a week and get paid for 5. Those kinds of things which normal people, regular people, regardless of party, look at and say, what's wrong with you people? And that's what he's got to talk to. And he's got to do it in places that, are in a guerrilla warfare kind of state. Situation, because he doesn't have the money to play, to go toe for toe. But I think he needs to tap into that. He needs to tap into that sense of almost on the national level. I think that's the problem they have. They've moved so far. It's not even a left and a right thing anymore. It's so far to the left that people feel uncomfortable with it. It's so far to the left that they've forgotten the issues that people care about. And so when you have a situation in the country like you have, people get upset about that. Same thing in California. People leaving, price of everything goes up. availability of goods goes down. You've got no fix on water. You got no fix on wildfires. You got government that doesn't work. So, I mean, that's the things that he's got to talk about that resonate across the board. It's about things that people look at and say, regardless of party, we got to get someone to fix this. And that's the way he's got to start talking about how he would fix it.
Well, several years ago, I worked for Univision for a long time, and we did a lot of polling, a lot of survey work on not just issues, but we sat down and we had focus groups. We talked to individuals about what they cared about. And in one of the studies that I remember, we looked at, we asked Hispanics across the United States, what is it that drives them out to go out and vote? And what we found by a large majority is that issues drive people out to vote, not the candidate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the issues and the way they're presented, the issues and the solutions that come with it. The candidate, for I believe, if memory serves me right, and I'll try to pull it out. I believe it was somewhere about 25% of people were driven by the candidate themselves, but well over 50% was by the issues. And that becomes a thing, is that there's, we in California, we're a diverse state, not just ethnically, but geographically, we're very diverse. From San Diego to Central Valley, and Sacramento, San Bay Area. But there are certain things that kind of impact us all, and it's just the issues that you mentioned. The homelessness situation, the cost of gas, the inflation, and those are all things that impact you, no matter where you live and no matter what ethnicity you are, and
right.
it hits us all kind of the same.
And none of it is new. I mean, that's the other part is, and I think that's what people need to realize is, it's not one day we woke up. It's not like the pandemic. One day we went to bed and there's this thing go over in China, and I remember it well. In January of 2020, it was like, oh yeah, that's in China. That's not going to be a problem. Then in February, or it was the end of February. Nancy Pelosi was in Washington, D.C., and she goes to Chinatown in Washington, D.C. to, say this is not an issue. And then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, we wake up and it's here and it's spreading. That comes out of nowhere. The stuff we're talking about, I mean, the homeless thing didn't happen yesterday. It's been happening consistently. It's been getting worse consistently. The spending that takes place and the incompetence that takes place, that's been, consistent. The wildfire mitigation, that's been consistent. The inability to capture and distribute water in an equitable way so that farmers can farm and people can use water and all of that kind of stuff, that's not new. That's been going on since I moved out here 22 years ago. So none of this is new. The question is, have you had enough? I mean, that's really the question. Have you Californians had enough of the same problems not being fixed? You want to try something different? If you want to try something different, then try something different. If you want to, keep talking about something, then feel free to keep reelecting the people that you're electing, because that's all you're going to do is talk about it.
Right. Well, we'll see how this whole thing turns out, and we'll see if Gavin Newsom and his team continue the strategy of trying to make Dahle more like Trump, or trying to at least link him to it, and we'll see how Brian ends up responding.
Yeah, Brian's got better hair. And he's probably never had a hole in one.
That is true. That is true. Right
Trump,
there.
I heard Trump say he had 7 hole in ones.
In one game.
No,
right?
no, not in one round. But and the Piers Morgan thing. Piers Morgan asked him a question about, tell me about your hole in one and how many have you had? He said he had 7 of them.
Oof.
I was like, dude, you must be going to the pitching putt. I don't know, man.
Yep.
7 hole in ones.